All right, guys. So this is the last day. This is actually going to be your summative. So I'm gonna like with the car buying thing. I'm gonna walk you through just one example, and then you guys are gonna go through and do kind of your own. Like you're gonna make sure you follow the directions. It seems kind of like a lot today, but if you follow those step by step, it's fine. It's really not a lot. It's getting overwhelmed. It can be overwhelming if you look at it like as a I don't know, depending on how you look at it. But it's really not. But we're going to talk about buying a house, which is very important, and it's the most, probably the biggest expense that you will ever have. But it's also a good debt to have because of equity and things like that. So, so just like yesterday, we're going to talk about some vocabulary first before we get started. A purchase price is the total amount, just like with the car, that you agree to pay for a home. It is the starting point for your mortgage and determines how much money you will need to borrow. A down payment is the amount of money you pay up front when you buy the house. It's usually a percentage of the purchase price, and this one there's probably a little more regulations with down payments when it comes to a mortgage versus a car. It usually is a percentage of the purchase price and helps reduce the amount you need to borrow in a mortgage. Remember, what we're going to be using the TVM solver for is what we're actually borrowing. So you have a purchase price, and a down payment is something that you're paying out of pocket to reduce how much money you're borrowing. So that's going to give us, after the down payment, that's going to give us our loan amount. This is the amount of money you borrow to finance the purchase of a property. You calculate it by subtracting the down payment from the purchase price, just like we did with the car loan. So we take our purchase price minus our down payment. We're going to deal with taxes later. So we had sales tax with the car. We are going to have taxes with this, but we're going to deal with that a little bit later on. And then your mortgage is a type of loan. So when you hear the word mortgage, it's specifically used to buy real estate. So I didn't say what is your mortgage with a car, like I talked about the finance amount or something like that. A mortgage is referring to real estate like a house. When you take out a mortgage, you borrow money from a lender that is a bank like Wells Fargo or Chase or USAA to pay for the property, and in return, you agree to pay back that money gradually over time with interest. And not only is this um, the biggest expense you'll probably ever have, it is also one that you have the largest length of time to pay it back. So your mortgage payment is just the regular monthly payment on a mortgage. So the yesterday with the car and today with the mortgage, your PY and your CY are always going to be 12. It's not going to say compounded this amount. So you're making 12 payments a year. And just like with car payments, your terms are typically given to you sometimes in years, but a lot of times also you'll see them in months. So months are really what we're looking at. Like how often are you paying that payment? Like how many times are you going to make that payment? And anyways, so your mortgage payment is important, and it involves. This is kind of sometimes can be kind of confusing because it's broken up into like several parts. The first part is the principal, and this is the amount of money that you borrow to buy the house. There's another typo. Where each payment you make reduces this amount, but a lot of times in the beginning, uh, most of the money you pay towards your mortgage will end up going towards interest. Um, it's I don't necessarily. I mean, I guess it's different based off of like what type of loan you have. But a lot of times, a lot of that money goes. Seems like it goes towards interest um, more than it does principal. And when you start paying off the interest, the principal kind of goes down. Um, but the interest, just like we've seen every single day, it's the cost of borrowing money. It is usually a percentage of the principal and is paid along with the principal in your monthly mortgage payment. We do have taxes. So taxes are they're property taxes. That's how like I'm paid as a teacher. Um, that's how we get money for our school districts and stuff is from property taxes. These taxes are based on the value of the house and are often included in your monthly payment. Some people pay their taxes as a lump sum or like quarterly or something like that, but we're going to do this where it's included in your monthly payment. And the same with insurance. So you don't go to a dealership and your insurance that you have is not through the dealership. Your car insurance is paid through your insurance company. But with the house, it's part of your monthly payment more than likely, at least if you're probably just starting off for your first home. So homeowners insurance protects your home and belongings from damage or loss. Like taxes, insurance costs are often included in your monthly payment. So the taxes and insurance, like in my case, my taxes and insurance go towards, like when I pay monthly. Let's just say let's just say I paid $1,000 a month. Out of that $1,000, there's a proportion that goes to the principal. There's a percent that goes towards the interest, and then there's an amount that also goes towards the taxes and insurance. And that taxes and insurance are automatically sent into what's called an escrow account, which is a special account where part of your monthly mortgage payment goes to cover your property tax and insurance. The lender, actually, who you buy, who your mortgage is from, actually manages this account, and they pay them once a year, typically. So they pay them once a year, even though you pay for them monthly. You pay for them monthly so that you don't, so that you have enough in there for when it's paid. So, and then sometimes you might hear of an escrow shortage, which I had this year, which is not good. And it's like, it means that you contributed monthly, but at the end of the year, your taxes went up and you didn't know it and you didn't have enough to cover it. So the next year, you're like having to like compensate for that shortage, and it affects your next year, and then your mortgage payment goes up. So it's not fun, but it happens. It's happened to me a couple times. Um, so that's taxes and insurance often go into an escrow account that's paid by your lender. And then equity is another important term in real estate, and it's the difference between the current value of your house and the amount you still own your mortgage. As you pay, so think about this: as you pay on a debt, that debt that you owe, as time goes on, should get smaller and smaller. But with real estate, as like unlike cars, real estate actually typically increases in value. So when you pay over time, you owe less and less for the amount of time you pay, but your value of your home typically gets more and more. So when you buy a home today, you should be able to sell it for more than what you paid for it in a year or two, um, unlike a car. And so that difference is called equity. Your credit score, we've already talked about. Um, it's a number that represents your credit worthiness or how likely you are to repay borrowed money. Lenders use this credit score to help decide whether to approve your mortgage application and what interest rate to offer you. A higher credit score can lead to better loan terms. Also, a lower credit score can lead to you not being able to buy a house. So, if your credit score is low and you like did some things in your young 20s or 30s, and you weren't responsible financially, then when you finally decide to become responsible and you want to buy a house and you want to have a house for your family and your kids to grow up in, you may not be able to because of mistakes that you made um, years before when you didn't handle that correctly because your credit score is low. So it's important to be aware of these things at a young age. Closing costs are fees that you pay at the end of the home buying process. We're not going to get a whole lot into that, but I mean, they kind of suck. They're expensive and they also add into things. This can include various expenses like appraisal fees, title insurance, and realtor commissions, which are expensive. Typically, it's like 3% for the buyer realtor and 3% for the seller realtor. So you're paying like 6% of what the purchase price of your home is towards realtor fees, and that can get up into the tens and thousands of dollars. Uh, Realtor commission is generally paid at closing and is typically a percentage of the sales price of a home. That's what I just said. They compensate the real estate agent who helps buy or sell the property. Then you have repayment terms. They are the length of time you choose to repay your mortgage. Common terms are a 30-year mortgage, which is 360 months. This means you have 30 years to pay off your loan. Another one is 20 years or 240 months, or 15 years or 180 months. And then a refinance is the process of replacing your existing mortgage with a new one, often to secure a lower interest rate or change the loan term. So if you were to buy a house today and interest rates are like like low interest rates are like 6.5%. if you were to buy a house for that, and then in 2 or 3 years the interest rates were to be at 3.5%, you definitely want to take advantage of that. That will save you a lot of money, for sure. I did that whenever I bought my first house, and my interest rates were about 6.5%, and then a couple years later they were like at 3.5%. And when I refinanced, um, my monthly payment dropped like $250. So it's definitely beneficial. So when you buy a house with a mortgage, your payments are divided into principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So you start with a down payment, and over time, you build equity in your home. Understand your credit score is essential for getting a good mortgage rate, and the whole process involves closing costs, where realtor fees are typically paid, and you will choose a repayment term that suits your financial situation. So we're going to look at one example. I'm going to show you guys how to do this, and then your project is going to be what I tell you here in a second. So suppose you find a home in Roanoke that has a listed purchase price of $350,000. Your credit score is 650, and you plan on putting 20% down. That's not realistic for a new buyer, because 20% down of 350,000 is a lot. Most of the time, that might be in your second home when you have equity attached to that. So, but let's figure out kind of what our loan amount would be based off of this, because we're going to find out what our monthly payment is, and in order to do that, we need to find out how much our loan amount is. So, determine your monthly principal and interest payment. This is often shorthanded for what's called P&I. That's your principal and interest payment, not your taxes and insurance, for a 15, 20, and 30-year mortgage. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this table to kind of organize this stuff. I have a purchase price of $350,000. I'm putting 20% down, so I need to figure out what 20% of 350,000 is. So I'm going to multiply that by 350,000 times 0.2, which is 20% is a decimal, and that gives me $70,000. So I'm going to put $70,000 out of my pocket and give that to the bank, and then now I don't need to take a loan for 350,000. I would take a loan for 350,000 minus my down payment. So I'm only financing 280,000. This is what I'm paying interest on, 280,000, not 350. So this is my PV that I'm going to be using, that I'm taking a loan out on. So let's look at I think that this is for the 15 year. So for the 15 year, I'm making 180 payments. That's what my N is. So it's just it's the total amount of payments I'm making. My percent, do I have that? Oh, I guess I need this. Okay, so my percent is, if my credit score was 650, that's going to be fair. Okay, 650 is fair. So for a 15 year, I think this first one is for a 15 year. It's going to be 6.75. So this first, I think I have my animations at the end. So 6.75. My present value is going to be my loan amount. I'm not investing. A home is an investment, but we're borrowing. That's our loan amount. So it's going to be positive 280,000. I'm trying to find my monthly payment, so I'm going to skip that. My future value after 180 months, I shouldn't owe anything on this house. So my future value, it's not the actual value of the home. It's talking about the loan. So that's going to be paid off. My PY and CY should both be 12, and then alpha enter. That should give me an amount of $2,477.75. For our 20 years, that is 240 payments, and our amount is 7%. My PV has not changed; it's still 280,000. My future value is still going to be 0. Those are both going to be 12. And then alpha enter will give me $2,170.84. And then 360 months is how many payments I'm making for a 30-year. That percent is 7.25%. Still $280,000. It's going to be 0 and 30 years, and then 12 and 12. And I get this. Now, if you typically go to an online mortgage calculator and you type in some numbers, this is typically what you'll see. You'll see the P&I, okay? And that's kind of misleading a little bit, because that only includes the principal and interest. And we talked about how you also have taxes and insurance. So let me break that down for you. That is not your monthly payment. That is your monthly payment for your principal and interest. Let's talk about the other part. Okay, so the way we're going to do this, and when I talk about your project, this is what you're going to do as well. Your taxes are going to vary based off of where you live. So if you live in Roanoke, Roanoke actually has lower taxes than Trophy Club. I was actually looking for a home that's right by the school that's considered Roanoke, that's right next to all the Trophy Club homes, and the taxes are way better there than they are. And you're like living really in Trophy Club, but your address is Roanoke. So um, where you live matters. So we're going to be Google searching approximate averages of this stuff. So I've already done this for Roanoke. I've Google searches, and this is what you're going to need to do pretty much exactly. Like you're going to specify where the actual house is located at, and you're going to look up average annual property taxes in that specific location. So I screenshotted this off the internet. I don't care about that 1.54%. I'm just kind of skimming down. At the bottom, you see this number right here. It says median annual Roanoke. The tax bill was about that, and it says which is almost $6,000 higher than the national median property tax bill. So our taxes are pretty high in Texas. So I'm going to take this number, this 8,371, and that's what the escrow. That's what my lender is going to pay. Um, if that's my tax bill, that's what they're going to pay once a year. So they're going to divide that into 12 equally payments and add that to my mortgage payment, or add that to my principal and interest payment. So I'm going to take this number and divide that by 12. It doesn't change depending on the 15, 20, or 30 year because it's still the same amount. That's the taxes. The 15, 20, and 30 year have to do with the principal and interest. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing with the homeowner's insurance, making sure we plug in the actual location as well, because that can vary too. When I did that, Roanoke, the average annual cost of homeowners insurance is around $1,395. And so that's a year. So this is also going to go into an escrow account monthly. So my lender is going to take that and divide that by 12. And let's just say that my insurance or my taxes went up and I didn't, and they went up in the middle of the year or some other time, and my was short. This is that escrow shortage I was talking about. That's not very fun. So it's only happened to me a couple times, but anyways, it does happen. So I'm going to take this number. I'm going to divide this by 12, and I get I get $116.25 a month. So these are the four parts of my um, mortgage. I have my principal and interest kind of combined, and then I have my monthly property tax going to escrow, and then my monthly homeowner's insurance going to escrow. Now I don't have to do anything with that escrow. I pay that, and my lender takes care of that. Okay, so my total monthly mortgage payment, often called like PITI, that stands for principal interest, pro, principal interest, taxes, and insurance. Principal interest, taxes, and insurance. That's all of those four things combined. I want to add those things together. And so I get, if I do $2,477.75 plus $697.58 plus $116.25, I get this amount. So this is more than likely a rough estimate of what I'm going to be paying based off of these. Yes, when you look at the 15-year, that's more. That's a lot bigger payment, but you're also paying way less interest on that, and we'll look at that here in a second. And you're paying it off in half the time. So, for instance, if I'm paying $3,291.58 every month for 15 years, so I'm doing that 180 times because there's 180 months in 15 years. If I do that, this is the amount I'm paying for that $350,000 mortgage. Okay, we can see how much interest, and some of that's taxes too, taxes and insurance. But and those amounts, it's going to vary from year to year. Like your mortgage payment can adjust because taxes and insurance are not fixed. They're fixed for like a year, but they can adjust. Sometimes interest rates are adjustable too, depending on what type. Like your mortgage company will explain that to you. Um, if I multiply my monthly payment for a 20-year times 240, because I'm making that payment 240 times, we can see how this amount changes, right? So it's more beneficial in the long run to pay the 15-year. But that's not always feasible. Sometimes, like we live and we budget monthly, so sometimes having a lower monthly payment fits our financial situation. But in the long run, look how much more we're paying. Like that is an absurd amount more. Um, so, I mean, you're talking. You can buy another starter home with the difference between the 15 and 30 year. So, 6, 7, yeah, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, you can buy another like almost a like a $400,000 home with the interest difference, or with the not interest difference, because it's not just interest; it's taxes and insurance too included in there. Okay, so that's the type of calculations you need to be able to do for this project. So we're going to talk about the project now. I'm calling this your dream home project, even though it's really not. It's kind of like the dream home. It's like at the end. But in this project, you're going to take a realistic look at your future career, expected income, living situation, and financial planning. Through research and analysis, you'll gain valuable skills that will prepare you for making informed financial decisions as you move into adulthood. So, these are kind of a lot of steps, and if you follow along with me on the rubric, I don't have this listed as a rubric, but I try to make these kind of go along with the rubric. I put the outline and the rubric kind of combined in one, so you didn't have. I was trying to make it less wordy, but I also it is kind of a lot. Okay, so but if you go through this step, it's not really a lot, but just go from start to finish. So the first thing you need to do is, if you have an idea for a career that you want to do, I want you to Google search that. And if you don't, pick something. I don't care what it is. But what you're going to be Google searching is we're going to be Google searching a lot and finding some information on the um, the average this or the average that. So whatever you want to be, like a cop or a dentist or a business marketing analysis or whatever you want to do, plumber, whatever. And I want you to research the average gross. So uh, before taxes, the average gross, like starting salary associated with that profession. And it's very important that you put starting salary with that profession. And then you're going to estimate your net salary by multiplying that gross salary by 0.72. That's going to give you an approximate net salary. Um, and that's 72. That's about 28% taken out of your gross for things like taxes, federal and state taxes, um, health insurance, Social Security, things like that. Um, so you're going to determine your net salary. And then from your net salary, you're going to determine your monthly uh, net income. So, and you do that by just dividing that net salary by 12. And then that's the amount of money that you have available um, every month. That's the money that's coming in. So from there, we've already talked about some expenses. Here, this project only has to do with housing, like income. Uh, but our income options, you need to consider your living situation. So you can rely on your single income, and which means you're going to do the project by yourself. There's going to be no, I know y'all try to get groups of three. There's no groups of three. This is either by yourself or with a partner. Trust me, I would like it if it was groups of three because it would be less I had to grade. But no, that's not how this is going to work. Uh, so you can do the project by yourself, or you can combine incomes with a partner. Um, why you might want to do that? Well, that gives you more money, right? It gives you you can if you average income is, you know, 75,000 and your spouse's income is 75,000, then you guys have a combined income of 150,000 and therefore can spend more. You make more, right? But if you're just by yourself, then you have to manage and budget with that 75,000. Um, So that's the next thing we're going to do is consider whether or not you're going to be working by yourself or with a partner. And then I had this posted on the Google Calendar, or on the Canvas calendar, where you're going to generate your a random credit score. So you're going to go and find this link on my calendar, click on it, and it might ask you to run the script. Just hit OK, and when you open it and click on it, and then you're just going to write down your credit score, and that's going to be the credit score you're going to be using. If you are married or so you're working with a partner, when you go and you find out what your monthly payment is and do all this stuff for your interest rate, you're going to use the lesser of the two scores, okay, not the higher one. So, I didn't include this in my slides, but I'm going to talk about it now. I do want you guys, just like I showed a screenshot of where I got my information of like the property taxes in Roanoke and the property insurance in Roanoke. I do want that to be mentioned as well. So okay, so housing budget. So financial planners generally advise that you should allocate no more than 30% of your net monthly income toward housing expenses, which include both mortgage and rent. So to calculate a comfortable housing budget, you're going to multiply your anticipated monthly income. So if you after you found your net annual or your net monthly income, say that was $4,000, you're going to multiply that by 0.3, and that's going to give you like what you need your monthly payment to be below. This will provide you a guideline with your ideal mortgage payment. If you're married, do this for both incomes, and then by adding them together, and then do 30% of y'all's combined income. Okay, so after we have kind of our jobs, how much we can afford on a house, next thing is where do you want to live? So, and this has to be in the United States because we're going to use Realtor.com or some other sites that I know have homes in the United States and not in other countries. So you need to determine a geographical place you want to live within the U.S. Keep in mind that housing prices can vary significantly from one area to another. So it might be, for instance, you might be able to purchase a larger and more desirable home in certain regions for far less than you would in high cost areas like California. So this is kind of this starter home section is worth the majority. The starter home in your mid grade home is worth the most out of this project. So now that you have discussed, or now that we've discussed the importance of keeping housing expenses within 30% of your combined adjusted net income, using a lot of words, you can leverage this figure along with the estimated 30-year mortgage. And I would start off with 30 years only because it gives you, this is your starter home. You're not going to be making that much when you first start your career, uh, or it's unknown because you're just starting. So how much can you afford? I would use 30 years. You can always change that and go back to like once you calculate it and you're like, oh, I can afford that. Then you can change it to 20 or 15. Um, but I would say start with 30 and then see what that monthly payment is. Um, and then if that's a lot less than what your actual income is, then use it. Then use 20 or 15. Um, but before we actually find our monthly payment, we want to be realistic with the house that we can afford. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the TMB solver, where the 30% housing budget is our monthly payment. So if I said that I have $2,500 available to spend every month for my house, I'm going to put that in for my monthly payment. Make sure you make it negative because it's something that we're paying. And all we're doing this for is to just get an idea of what we can search for. Because you don't want to be searching for $650,000 homes when you can only afford $350,000. And we don't want to do unnecessary work. So we're going to try to find a realistic value that we should be looking at. And we're going to determine our present value. That's going to represent the financed amount. So this will provide an approximate price for the house that we can afford. So now that we know that, you're going to go to Realtor.com or another site if you want to use another site. But go to Realtor.com and you're going to search for homes that are for sale to own. in the desired location that you chose. You are going to browse through this site or something comparable to find your first home. You can click on filters and narrow down your homes by price range. For example, you should look at the PV you found and make not like you should look at the PV you found and you can choose. I don't want any homes to be seen above this. So if your if your present value was 350,000, then you can make that be the max, so you don't see anything above that. And then maybe you only want to look at homes that have pools or basements or single stories. You can do that as well. In Texas, you won't find many that have basements, but once you find your home, take note of the listing price, square footage, how many bedrooms and bath, and take a screenshot of the front view. By the way, uh, all of this information is in your packet. So I'm just reading through this so I can communicate this to you and have said that, and then you need to go back and follow this. Okay. You also need to include screenshots of your front view of the house, the backyard, the kitchen, and one other room in the house that's a good selling point. Typically, like the living room or the master bathroom, um, are pretty good. Like the bedrooms, those bedrooms are bedrooms. The selling points typically come from the backyard, the kitchen, the master bathroom, and sometimes the living room or whatever. Um, since you're a first time home buyer, the lenders there's so many typos. The lender offers a special minimum down payment of 5%. So you found your home. Let's just say that the purchase price was $200,000, and but you have to pay 5% down. So you need to calculate what this down payment is so you can determine your loan amount. Once you know what your loan amount is, you're going to actually determine your actual monthly payment, your estimated actual monthly payment. So you're going to do that by using your TVM solver to find your P&I, your principal and interest, just like I did in the example. And this is where I would recommend doing a 30-year, but you can choose one just as long as it fits within your budget. It shouldn't take you that long to do all three. But remember, we also have to consider property tax and insurance. So the TVM solver is going to give us just our principal and interest payment. After we have that, we're going to Google search both of these two things: average annual property in the city you chose, and average annual homeowners insurance in the city you chose. Divide both of those by 12 and add them to your P&I payment, your principal and interest. Make sure your final mortgage payment after taxes and insurance does not exceed your 30%. If it does, you need to choose a different house for one, or choose if you didn't choose 30 years and you choose like 20 or 15 years, try 30 years. Or decide you want to work with a partner and get married and then combine y'all's income so you can afford that house. So those are some options. After you come up with that, it's after we finish that first final or that first step of our starter home, um, we want to establish some professional goals because we don't. I mean, it's fine if you stay in that starter home. There's nothing wrong with that, but we want to eventually grow and not stay at an entry level position. We want to, hopefully make more money, and as we grow and we start off with just ourselves and the spouse, maybe our house is too small for a family of four or five. So we need to upgrade. So you need to come up with 3 professional goals that will set you apart from other employees so that you can get promoted and are more up the ladder, or you may have a goal to be doing something else in 10 years, like another profession. You can use that as well. Or if you own your own business, your goals should reflect how you're going to grow your business. If you're married, you need a total of 6 goals, 3 apiece. Okay, so these goals have to do with like professional growth and financing and stuff like that. How are you going to what are you going to do uh, to get noticed, to get recognized? What are your goals and how are you going to implement them? Okay, is it going to be I'm going to make sure I come to work every day on time. I don't call in sick at the last minute. I sometimes may work extra hours if the boss needs it, like things like that. So, next thing is it's time to update your income based on your goals. So, we're going to look at our mid range home. This is the other biggest portion of your project. So, this is a summative. Assuming they were met, If you are still doing the same thing, look at the average salary for the career you chose. But now we want to type in with 10 years experience, and then we're going to update our income, um, our monthly net income. Now, my slides look a little bit different than your rubric. Your rubric, I think I'm a little more detailed and probably don't specify this. Like on your rubric, I explain this in terms of tell us about this. So when you're going through and you're presenting your project, because we're going to have presentations on these, I want you to talk to us like, "Hi, I'm Mr. Price. I'm a teacher. My salary is blah blah blah. My blah." Like, I want y'all to talk to us about like you're introducing yourself. So my slides don't necessarily reflect that. So make sure you read through that. Um, so after you look at 10 years experience, you're going to adjust your net monthly income, and hopefully it's more, and maybe you can afford more. Starters homes are hold specific or hold special significance for some of us. Um, I know they do with my kids, often brimming with beloved childhood memories, particularly when your parents are young at the time because they couldn't afford maybe something more. But as we mature, our responsibilities and priorities change. Our family sizes grow, often leading us to search for new living spaces that align more with our growing needs. So, we're going to sell our or we're going to sell our starter home. Since you have lived in your starter home for 10 years, the value of your home has probably gone up, meaning that you can sell your current home for more than what you paid for it. And since you have been making monthly payments for the last 10 years, you have decreased the amount you owe. The difference between what your home is worth and what you owe is called equity. Now, this is not going to be necessarily realistic with what we're about to do if you did a 15 year, because you would only have 5 years left in this home. So, but we are going to do another average search. Before we do that, let me explain this real quick how equity works. So, 10 years ago, let's suppose you bought a home for $225,000 from your first job, your first house. After a decade of making mortgage payments, you now owe $205,000, which may seem like a lot, but keep in mind that includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. But the home is now worth $350,000. This means you have $145,000 in equity. That is money that you can take and you can spend on whatever you want. However, if you're selling your home, you need to have another home, and homes require down payments. So most people put this towards a down payment, which means you can afford something and finance less. So let's say that you can only afford a mortgage payment of like a, like mortgaging $500,000. Well, that means that you can afford almost a $650,000 home, because you're putting almost $150,000 down on it. So that's kind of how the equity works. Most people use a significant portion of this equity as a down payment on the next home, allowing them to afford more by reducing the amount they need to finance. Another thing to consider too, we're going to use the full amount of our equity that we search, but also if you haven't bought new furniture for 10 years, it's probably old and outdated. Like, that's a good time. If you have $145,000 in equity, like, you can easily take 20,000 of that and go buy all new furniture, all new bedrooms, all new stuff for your living room, couches and stuff. That 20,000 will go quick, but you can also buy some like nice stuff with that. And then the rest of that is still a good chunk. I mean, you're still looking at, if you spend $20,000, you still have $125,000 to put down on your new home. So what we're going to do with our mid-range home is we're going to Google search what is the average, and you need to be specific with what I'm telling you so you get good results. What is the average home equity after 10 years of a starter home? Like, so this is a starter home, assuming that it is not like an expensive home. It's like a entry level home, but it has to be in the area you chose, and use this amount as your next down payment. So we're not going to be doing 5%. We're going to be using Google. And I failed to mention this in my slides, but I do want, anytime y'all do these Google searches, I want y'all to do a screenshot like I showed y'all, and I want y'all to put them on your slides. Then we're going to use TVM Solver with your new monthly income and a 30% housing budget to determine a house you can afford. So we're going to use that 30% as our monthly payment, figure out what our present value is, and then start searching homes based off of that present value. If you want to move to a new location, now's your time. Make sure you research the average property tax and property insurance in the new location. Now search for your new home. Congratulations. Choose a term, redo the credit score generator, and then calculate your new monthly mortgage payment based on the sales price as your present value. Make sure you are at or under the 30% monthly budget and you have included the monthly amount for property taxes and insurance. You need to make sure to include screenshots of the front of the house, the backyard, the kitchen, and any other pictures you find are good selling points. And then finally, lastly, this one's just kind of for fun, and I'm not requiring you to do all this additional stuff. Well, not so much additional. There are some things we need to do. But if money wasn't an option, I want you to just search for your dream home. It can be a cabin, it can be a mansion, a castle, wherever. Make sure to include pictures. Use the listing price as as your PV and calculate the monthly payment, including estimated taxes and insurance based on the location of the house and using the same credit score and term used for your mid range house. So you don't have to go and do another credit score. Um, and so make sure to include the pictures using the listing price as your PV. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So, and I think I have this in y'all's rubric for your down payment. You don't even have to put a down payment on this. I really don't care for your dream home. Um, but I do want, like, you can just use that purchase price, say with 0% down, just to kind of get a kind of an idea of what that payment might be. Um, but I do want you to actually do the property taxes and insurance and search those. If the location has changed, then you need to do that. If not, then the information should be the same as you used for your mid and your starter home. And then, based on your career aspirations and goals in life, how realistic is it to one day live in a home like you selected for your dream home? So, conclusion. This is the last part. Reflect on what you've learned about home ownership and career affordability. And this is your last, uh, and this is your summative for this unit. So good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.